As a young girl, Sarah Zastrow suffered the loss of her father. Through the support of the church, she was able to rise above the grief and make a difference in the lives of others.
My name is Sarah Zastrow, and this is my testimony. When I was 4.5 years old, my father was killed. He smarted off to someone in a parking lot who had a knife. I remember the day that my mother found out. Even though I was only 4.5 years old, I remember the room that I was in, and I remember that my mother just sobbed when she got the news. I was the oldest. My mother had 2 other little ones, a newborn and a 3-year-old. And throughout the coming years, my mother really struggled to just provide for our family. And I just remember feeling like I needed to lighten her load and help out. And I would try to clean house for her. I would try to help in different ways. When I was about 13 years old, I remember just feeling hopeless, feeling like there has to be more to life than this. I was angry because my father had been taken away, and I felt like life would be simpler if my father was here. And so I remember being in my bedroom that day and just crying out to God and saying, God, if you're real, I need to know that you're real. I felt the presence of God that day. I felt like he came into my bedroom and he just wrapped his arms around me. That was an encounter that changed my life forever. I remember just feeling a peace come over me, and that moment changed my life. Through that experience, I learned so much about the character of God. I learned that he loves me so much, and he's there for me, and I can trust him. And I learned the power of the community of our church. And so I'm thankful to be a part of a community here at Dream City Church.
Well, today we have with us our Children's Ministry Director, Sarah Zastrow. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here.
Well, Sarah, I've never heard your childhood testimony. I had just heard someone mention to me that something had happened. So I'm excited to talk to you about it on set and hear your story. But let's start off with your childhood. What did that look like?
So I'm the oldest, grew up in Louisiana. I have 2 younger brothers, and I guess a pretty typical childhood. But when I was 4.5 years old, my father was killed.
Oh my goodness.
And so it kind of took a tragic turn.
Yeah. And what happened, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so my father was a strong, big man,
Yeah.
6'3", but he was in a parking lot and he smarted off to someone who had a knife. And the person stabbed him 3 times, and my father did not make it.
I'm so sorry about that. So you were a child when this happened. How did this affect you growing up without a father in your life?
Yeah. So I remember the day that it happened. I was 4.5 years old. I was very young, but I remember my mom getting the news and her just sobbing in the bedroom. And I remember what the room looks like. I kind of can go back to that moment, but I remember just having to feel like I had to step up to the plate. I had to help take care of my little brothers. I had to help lighten my mother's load.
At 4.5 years old, you felt like you needed to pick up
Yeah.
the plate. And so how did you deal with that grief? I know, you were 4.5 years old, so there's only a level that you probably had.
Right.
But as you got older, did you start to feel a second wave of that?
I did. I kind of, I was very young when it happened. So I didn't understand a lot of it, and my mother really kept a lot of it from us because she wanted to protect us.
Yeah.
But I just remember, just feeling angry and just feeling sad, like, why did this happen to our family?
Yeah.
I would see other families with mom and dad and the kids and think, why don't we have this?
And so now you are the children's ministry pastor, and it's amazing how what God has brought us through, he often uses us to do.
Yes.
And you probably counsel a lot of children through grief and stuff like that. What have you seen the impact of your story be on young kids today?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I've shared my story with the kids and been able to really tell some of the kids, look, I've been there where you are now.
Yeah.
We see a lot of kids that are either going through divorce, maybe their parent doesn't live in the same state, and so they feel a lot of those same feelings that I felt, being alone and maybe feelings of anger, like why did this happen to our family? And so I think it's nice when I can identify with that and tell them, hey, through this, even though it was a tragic circumstance, I was able to find Jesus in my sadness, in my anger, and it's okay to talk to God and to share those feelings that we have with Him because He loves us.
And then overall, how did you lose your anger and your sadness? Because you're a joyful, happy person. Your children are that way. How did you overcome that? And people watching today who are dealing with grief, how do you let it go?
Yeah. Well, I was about 13 years old, and I was feeling very angry. I was feeling very sad and really just desperate to know that there was someone out there that loved me. And I remember screaming out to God and just saying, God, if you are real, I need to know that you're real.
Yeah.
And that was an encounter that I had with Jesus, right? He came in and I just felt His presence. I was in my room all by myself, but I felt His presence so real in that moment. And, it was just that encounter with Him that was able to change things.
And so, Sarah, what would you say to parents watching right now who have children who are going through a difficult time? How important is the church? How important is it to get them involved in a children's ministry when they are struggling and hurting?
Yeah. The church is such a great place to bring your kids to learn about Jesus, to learn who He is, and just to be there and be a part of the community, right? Because there's people there that can come alongside and support you. And, my mother had that. Whenever after my dad passed, she was kind of in and out of church, right? Not really consistent, but I loved it when I was there.
Yeah.
I loved to be there, and I know she struggled whenever I was little and did the best she could,
Yeah.
but it's so important to have a church community that can come around you.
That's so great. Well, thank you so much for being on our show today.
Yeah.
Well, if you have children who are going through a difficult season, or maybe they're not in a difficult season, but they just need that church community, Dream City Kids has one of the most amazing programs for your children to be a part of, and an amazing pastor that you just heard from, Pastor Sarah Zastrow. So get them involved. Go to dreamcitychurch.us and click the Kids tab to find out how you can get your kids in a community.